Launch now!
Ant-Man saw the villain Kong trying to escape and quickly rushed towards the fortress. Kong immediately sent out swarm fighters to intercept. Ant-Man didn't expect so many fighters to appear suddenly, and could barely hold his own. Fortunately, reinforcements arrived just in time. Kong sensed something was wrong and quickly raised the cannons. Ant-Man directly lifted the nearby butterfly-shaped platform as a shield. After destroying the defense tower, he took the opportunity to insert the shield into Kang's force field, but it didn't work at all. Ant-Man was thrown 100 meters away, but don't worry, he has another helper, the Wasp, who is also Ant-Man's wife. With the Wasp's help, Ant-Man directly turned into a human cannonball. But Kong isn't so easy to defeat. After all, he is even more troublesome than Thanos.
You're not the one with the hammer.
It's Thor.
As we all know, the Ant-Man is the one with the least presence among the Avengers.
Thank you, Spider-Man!
After Avengers Endgame, he transformed into a superhero overnight. He is either on his way to the red carpet or taking various group photos. He even published an autobiography. But just as Scott was feeling complacent, he received a call from the police station. His daughter Cassie was arrested for stealing a police car. Scott and his wife had to go pick up their daughter. After returning home, Scott's father-in-law, Dr. Pym, showed his family his research on ants, saying that as long as there is enough time, ants will evolve to a quite high level of technology. Cassie inherited her grandfather's scientific and technological ingenuity. She took out her invention, a device that can explore the quantum realm. But when Cassie mentioned that the device could send signals to the quantum realm, her grandmother Janet beside her suddenly had a serious expression. She hurried forward excitedly to turn off the device. Before she could explain, the quantum device suddenly malfunctioned. In an instant, it erupted with a mysterious blue force that sucked the entire Scott family in. Along with the colorful time-space tunnel, their family shrank rapidly, and even Dr. Pym's ants were no exception. Just as they were about to fall, Scott immediately transformed into Ant-Man and held his daughter in his arms. The two finally landed safely. Looking at the bizarre and exotic scenery around her, Cassie showed a nervous look. Scott comforted his daughter not to worry, telling her to treat it as a camping trip in the wild. At the same time, Dr. Pym and his daughter Hope also landed safely. While searching for his wife Janet, Dr. Pym couldn't help but wonder. This quantum realm seemed different from the previous one. At this moment, a mysterious spaceship appeared not far away. They were about to go forward to check but were stopped by Janet,
Do not move.
who suddenly appeared. Not until the spaceship left did Janet signal to hurry and find Scott and Cassie. On the other side, Scott was also searching for them with his daughter. At this moment, Cassie noticed the sun not far away was moving. As the glowing orb grew larger, it suddenly hurtled toward the father and daughter. Scott grew to giant size in an instant and caught the tentacled glowing orb. The orb, as if it were alive, tried to lift Scott into the air to kill him. Fortunately, Scott had the habit of changing size at will. He gathered all his strength and flung the orb away, but before he could catch his breath, the orb was swallowed by an even bigger creature. Scott turned and ran with Cassie. At this moment, a shockwave shot out from behind and blasted the monster into pieces. To their surprise, there were actually indigenous people in the quantum realm. The father and daughter were taken back to the tribe. The indigenous people here came in all shapes and sizes. Since Scott couldn't understand their local language, he was at a loss. At this moment, two bizarre-looking creatures walked out carrying a pot of red liquid. Without any explanation, they forcibly poured it into Scott's mouth. The moment he swallowed the liquid, Scott could suddenly understand the indigenous people's language. It turned out that this liquid could break the language barrier. After a brief exchange, the father and daughter were taken to meet their leader. When the leader learned they were outsiders, she wanted to drive them away immediately. It turned out the ruler of the quantum realm was Kong the Conqueror, who had oppressed the indigenous people and left them homeless. To avoid bringing trouble to the tribe, she told them to leave quickly, but Scott said he would leave as soon as he found Janet. The female leader immediately looked nervous when she heard that name, and immediately ordered everyone to evacuate. Kong the Conqueror's army had already arrived, and sent a large number of soldiers to surround the tribe. Because the incident happened suddenly, the indigenous people were caught off guard and had to fight. Scott hurriedly fled with his daughter, watching as the female leader was about to be in danger. Cassie couldn't stand by and do nothing, so she put on the Ant-Man suit and rushed forward. Unfortunately, she lacked combat experience, and was soon cornered by the enemy. Luckily, Scott arrived just in time, saved his daughter and even gave her an impromptu on-site lesson. As the battle intensified, a steel-clad figure with a large head and short limbs appeared on the battlefield. It instantly destroyed the indigenous people's shelter, and everyone had to flee in all. Directions: during the chaos, the female leader was unfortunately captured, and Scott and his daughter were also engulfed in smoke. After the fighting ceased, the big-headed steel figure revealed his true appearance. It turned out to be Darren, the villain from the first Ant-Man movie. After Darren was defeated by Scott, he shrank and ended up in the quantum realm. He was lucky to be rescued by Kong the Conqueror and transformed into his current form. Now he has a grand name, Imodoke. Although Imodoke was powerful at this time, he didn't kill them outright. It turns out that the arrival of Scott's family has already attracted Kong the Conqueror's attention. He ordered that they must be captured alive. On the other side, Janet, who was searching for Scott with Pym and Hope, also encountered local indigenous people. Janet directly issued a challenge. The leader took off the mask he had worn for many years. Not to mention, he looks quite unique. But the leader didn't get angry. Instead, he grew a new arm. The two smiled at each other and hugged. It turns out he is an old friend of Janet's, and he gave Janet a special means of transportation.
Says the man who invented flying on the back of an ant.
You're actually the first person to fly around on an ant. Later, the three came to a tribe full of technological flair. The indigenous people here also come in all bizarre shapes and forms. Janet also gave Pym and his daughter 2 glasses of red liquid. After drinking it, they immediately understood the tribe's language. At this moment, a spaceship hovered in the air and an old man with white hair stepped down. He is exactly Janet's old comrade in arms, Kyla, and also the leader of this tribe. Kyla ordered an octopus-set meal for the 3 of them. Just as everyone was about to eat, Kong the Conqueror's men arrived here. It turns out that during Janet's absence, Kyla had already defected to Kong the Conqueror. His purpose this time is to capture Janet alive. Seeing they were surrounded by soldiers, Hope took the lead in attacking. Unfortunately, the enemy was outnumbered. Dr. Pym had a sudden idea and hit the octopus with an enlarging dart. The enlarged octopus quickly tied up Kyla and his gang. The 3 boarded the spaceship in the chaos. After the crisis was averted, Janet finally told the truth. It turns out that 30 years ago, Janet was trapped in the quantum realm. There she rescued a severely injured scientist. His spaceship was quite special and could travel through the multiverse. However, it couldn't start because the spaceship's power core was damaged. In order to return to the real world, Janet began to help him repair the spaceship. She tried many methods but none worked. After countless failures, she finally repaired it successfully. Just as they were about to set sail and leave, Janet accidentally touched a button on the spaceship. The spaceship was connected to his brain nerves. Because of this, Janet saw all his memories. It turns out that this man is named Kong, who has destroyed countless multiverses. Many places have suffered massacres. For their own safety, although other universes couldn't kill Kong, they found a way to trap him in the quantum realm. To avoid causing more deaths and casualties, Janet finally realized the seriousness of the problem and abandoned the idea of leaving the quantum realm. However, Kong had already noticed that something was wrong with Janet and revealed his true colors. He said he would take Janet back to the time when she never left her daughter and promised not to destroy the place where they lived. Faced with such tempting conditions, Janet still chose to refuse, shrank herself, and took the power core away. But she was easily defeated by Kong, who had regained his strength. Janet knew very well that she couldn't beat the powerful Kong, so she slammed the enlarging dart in her hand into the power core. The core grew rapidly. Kong was blown away by this powerful force, although Janet successfully escaped afterwards. Kong also relied on this force to gain a firm foothold in the quantum realm and become the king here. And the Ant-Man family is the key for Kong to leave here. That's why Kong noticed them the moment they entered the quantum realm. At the same time, the captured Scott and his daughter also came face to face with Kong the Conqueror. Scott even tried to intimidate him with the name of the Avengers, but Kong the Conqueror didn't take it seriously, for he had already killed many Avengers in other universes. Later, Kong the Conqueror threatened Scott with Cassie, telling him to retrieve the power core for him, otherwise, he would kill his daughter in front of Scott. For Cassie's safety, Scott had to agree, but when they arrived near the power core, Scott realized things were not that simple. It turned out that after the power core was enlarged, an extremely unstable energy field had formed around it. Even the powerful Kong the Conqueror dared not approach. Scott had to take the risk of shrinking himself to pass through the energy storm. After overcoming numerous obstacles, Scott finally reached an empty space, and the power core was directly above him. Just as Scott was about to act, another version of himself suddenly split from his body. Scott was completely dumbfounded when Emodioke's voice came to his ears.
You're looking at the possibility of another you.
It turns out that inside the probability storm, every choice made in one's heart leads to a different outcome. This place is just like Schrodinger's box, and Scott is the cat. Before he knew it, Scott had split into countless versions of himself. At this moment, he was overwhelmed and could barely breathe. One of the versions couldn't stand it, grew rapidly, and tried to enter the core power, but was instantly blown to pieces. Witnessing this scene, the other Scotts fell into utter panic. As they fled, the ground suddenly collapsed. Just as Scott was falling into the deep pit, he suddenly heard his daughter's call and quickly regained his composure. At this moment, all the doppelgangers stopped being distracted, and worked together to form a human wall, carrying Scott to the front of the power core. Scott seized the opportunity to shoot shrinking darts, but they were bounced back by the core's power. At the same time, the human wall crumbled with a crash. Just as Scott was about to fall, his wife Hope arrived just in time. The two fought side by side, firing countless shrinking darts at the power core. Finally, the power core returned to its original size. But at this time, Scott still didn't know Kong the Conqueror's true intentions. Janet hurried over and told Scott never to hand over the power core. As soon as she finished speaking, Kong the Conqueror appeared before them. With just a simple reach, he snatched the power core back. Scott and his wife immediately shrank and rushed forward, but the power gap was too great. Kong the Conqueror knocked them to the ground without even exerting much effort. At the same time, Dr. Pym, who tried to secretly assist them, was also attacked by Imodiok. The spaceship was directly destroyed by 100,000 volts of electric current. Janet wanted to go to the rescue, but was taken back to the palace by Kong the Conqueror. Before long, Scott and his wife woke up, and the first thing they saw was Dr. Pym standing in front of them, with a group of fully armed giant ants behind him. It turned out that when they were sucked into the quantum realm, Dr. Pym's ants were also pulled in, and entered a time dilation zone in the quantum realm, where time passed 1,000,000 times faster than the outside world, so they lived tens of thousands of years in just one day. Their knowledge and technological level far surpassed that of humans. Even after countless years of trials, they still wanted to find their original owner. On the other side, Cassie showed no mercy when she got serious. She knocked down the two guards escorting her, then shrank herself to rescue the imprisoned tribal female leader. At the same time, Kong the Conqueror, who had obtained the power core, was plotting to bring his massive empire back to reality, to continue his plan of conquering other multiverses. As he delivered an impassioned speech, Cassie's image suddenly appeared on the screen. She called on all oppressed indigenous people to unite, to fight against Kong the Conqueror's tyranny together. This move enraged Kong the Conqueror. He ordered Imodiok to find Cassie and kill her. After speaking, he prepared to start the spaceship and leave the quantum realm. At the critical moment, Scott transformed into a giant and slowly walked out of the mist. As he crushed the 100-meter-high wall under his feet, he denounced Kong the Conqueror for breaking his promise. Watching the empire he had worked so hard to build being destroyed, Kong the Conqueror could no longer contain his anger, and ordered the entire army to attack and kill Scott. Under the fierce fire attack, Scott could barely hold his ground. At the critical moment, the oppressed indigenous people launched a counterattack, working together to attack this massive empire. The tide of the battle gradually turned. Kong the Conqueror realized the situation was dire, so he prepared to cut off the connection channel, but Cassie and the female leader had already rushed to the turret and stopped the enemy's defense in time. The indigenous army pursued the victory. Even the jelly creatures charged forward bravely, swallowing the enemy in one bite. Faced with the massive influx of indigenous troops, Kong the Conqueror immediately activated the protective shield. At this moment, he only wanted to escape quickly. Scott activated sprint mode, and grabbed a piece of building as a shield, blocking the enemy's intensive artillery fire. Then he stabbed the shield into the protective shield in one swift move, but the energy was too powerful. Scott was bounced away by the shield. Cassie was about to go help but was intercepted by Imodiok. Anxious to save her father, she immediately turned herself into a giant, easily knocking Imodiok to the ground. But Cassie didn't kill him, instead persuading him to turn over a new leaf and stop aiding the tyrant. At this moment, Scott came up with a brilliant idea. He asked his wife Hope to fly at top speed, and quickly throw him forward. Using inertia and the power of enlargement, Scott destroyed the protective shield. The spaceship was completely destroyed. Kong the Conqueror was thoroughly enraged. He decided to take action personally to kill everyone. In an instant, the counterattacking indigenous people were wiped out. The female leader had just thrown her spear when the enemy deflected it in one move. All the indigenous people fled in defeat. Only Scott's family of 3 remained. They launched attacks one after another, but all were easily countered by Kong the Conqueror. After all, he had suppressed countless multiverses and killed many Avengers. Scott's family was like ants in his eyes. Just then, Dr. Pym arrived with an army of ants, so numerous that they were innumerable. Kong the Conqueror immediately activated the protective shield, but all his efforts were futile against the ant army. At the same time, Imodiok was also successfully persuaded by Cassie to join the ant army in the attack. He detonated himself to destroy the protective shield. Kong the Conqueror was instantly swarmed by the ants. Meanwhile, Janet arrived at the center of the palace. She used the power core to open a new channel. Passing through it would take them back to reality. But just as Scott was passing through, he was hit by a burst of energy and knocked out. It turned out Kong the Conqueror wasn't dead. He wanted to escape through the portal. Scott would never let that happen and tried his best to stop him. Since Kong the Conqueror had run out of energy, he engaged in hand-to-hand combat. But even so, Scott was still no match for Kong the Conqueror, and was quickly beaten into submission. At this moment, Scott took out a dart and shot it at the power core. Kong the Conqueror immediately rushed toward the portal, but unexpectedly was knocked back. It was Hope, who had returned to find her husband. The couple joined forces again, and slammed Kong the Conqueror into the unstable core power. The erupted energy shattered him instantly. In the end, the quantum realm was successfully returned to the indigenous people. Scott and his wife also successfully returned to their real lives with their daughter's help. Ant-Man Scott's story comes to a temporary end, but the Marvel story is far from over. 3 of Kang's strongest forms appeared in the post-credits scene. It was they who trapped Kong the Conqueror in the quantum realm. But they never imagined that someone in the world could kill Kong the Conqueror. After all, it was something even they couldn't accomplish, so they summoned all the Kangs to prepare for the next world war. And that's where the movie ends. Ant-Man and the Wasp. Quantumania is a superhero movie full of fun and humor. It is also a film that showcases in the Marvel Cinematic Universe some new wonderful concepts and technologies. The so-called superheroes are just those who choose to protect their families among ordinary choices, compared with telling stories about saving the universe. Reminding the audience of trivial family matters and loved ones around them can make people feel the warmth and touch of the movie more deeply. It has to be said that the actors delivered excellent performances, and the special effects in the movie are also amazing. But some plots are not handled tightly enough. As the opening work of Marvel's Phase 5, this movie is worthy of attention despite being highly controversial. Its estimated opening weekend box office in North America reached $120 million, setting a new high for the Ant-Man franchise. This seems to indicate that no matter the quality of Marvel's works, there will always be audiences willing to pay for them. However, the film's high box office but poor word of mouth undoubtedly poses a severe challenge to Marvel. In any case, if you are a Marvel fan, this movie is a must-watch for you. This episode of the video commentary ends here. If you have other opinions, feel free to leave a comment in the comments section. See you next time.